then even just on this aspect of vanity, something I'm thinking of is taking this funnel and making something that players love buying things for vanity, and then creating, when you're saying horizontal progression, I don't know if you're referring to something along the lines of like rewarding people for skill wise. Is that
It's more just like option value. So
okay?
you tend to get some level of power by it, but it's like instead of your fireball just getting 10 plus 10 damage, you would give them option of a fireball versus like an ice ball,
Uh-huh.
and theoretically they would be like fairly balanced.
Yeah.
Whatever, and so that the person who's paid may have more options now, but they don't have just like an absolute power advantage, and that's usually in competitive experiences seemed a little bit more palatable because you
Yeah.
can still keep a competitive nature, and the people who don't necessarily spend, as long as they still have a pathway to a legitimate build. Maybe they don't have a pathway to play all the legitimate builds at once or something, or like swap between them freely or stuff like that. As long as they can be competitive, that tends to be deemed as more palatable. But there's different flavors of it. I mean, some games go entirely cosmetic and now have
Yeah.
it. Like League of Legends is a good example of this. They actually
Exactly.
started off more towards the former. They had
Interesting.
a lot of boosts and other things in game because their game was all about like a leveling
Yep.
experience, and you have to keep on getting the new champion. It was really hard to do that without paying. That was the original experience. They've moved away from that almost entirely, and I yeah, moved towards just paying for vanity content almost
Yeah, the big
exclusively.
thing I can just remember there is like the XP boosters. Those were a massive thing that,
Yeah,
yeah, now that I think about it, are gone.
yeah, and even after you got to the next level, it was really hard to play enough to earn every new champion because they were putting out a new champion every 2 weeks. So if that new champion was deemed more powerful, which is very commonly
Yeah.
the case, just because various things, they legitimately don't try to do that. By the way, I know there's a lot of memes about that, but I yeah, like that was deemed as some level of power, so it wasn't devoid of power. But they basically moved away from that entirely. If you played just like a modest amount of League, especially now with the cadence that they put out champions, you get the new champion like for more or less for free, as long as if you're trying to be competitive, you're playing enough to be competitive. You have enough like of the earned in-game currency to get the new champion,
Yeah.
uh, more or less. So yeah, almost all their monetization is on skins nowadays. Almost nobody spends on buying champions.
Yeah, and I think that can make a really healthy funnel in the sense of, if a project can nail down one of these economies to then incentivize this higher level playing of things like esports and routing these rewards, it could result in something really healthy where people are loving to buy the cosmetics, and then the players that have skill are able to tap into this sort of play to earn economy like we're seeing anyway in these like massive esports sponsored tournaments type thing. And then the cool thing about value going to the higher skill players is a lot of the time they tend to put it back in because it's where they're spending most of their time, in the sense that they'll probably buy the next cosmetic because it's just what they're doing most of the time. So that's something that I was thinking about as well, that could be built in, and it doesn't make it so much like a play to win, but more so incentivizing where we're seeing the space moving anyway, with tons of esports and like tournaments in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good way of putting it. Like maybe even frame that like slightly differently. You could have an economy where you, you earn like a governance token while playing, not necessarily the SLP like you do
Yeah.
in uh, Axie. You could do some other models, and like we're seeing a lot of exploration in this, where like the good players are people who positively contribute in some way, are the ones who are just gaining a governance token over time, and they vote on things that affect the game experience. So it's like the winners will affect some, I don't know, actual gameplay, and they can affect the story that is the world, or the story that is the competitive experience. And there's a lot of configurations that they could potentially be exposed to that now the community has a say on. So it's not necessarily even like a strictly monetary thing at that point.
Yeah.
People may pay in to have influence, but you're voting on typically community things and directions of the game, and not necessarily any micro competitive thing. And so those are some interesting explorations, I think, too, because then you're building with your community. And I think it's kind of weird. So something that like I haven't mentioned yet, but like very explicitly need to say, like games are made with money. That you
Mm-hmm.
have to, if you want the best builders and you want the best games, it's not all about the money. I mean, there's definitely people who do it as passion projects, but servers that they're hosted on aren't cheap. The talent is even more expensive, and to make really good experiences. And then that's part of the reason why free to play has done so well. It's not just because like it's a more healthy environment, or any kind, like making more money makes a better game. Like, not exclusively, you can definitely screw it up, but zero money is really hard to make a good game out of. And so, yeah, and so I think figuring out healthy ways of monetizing with your community in this way uh, is going to be a very interesting exploration as you go. Because yeah, some people are going to contribute money to the thing, and I really kind of hope we get away from that being like a very evil thing. Now, the economic model can be something that can be pretty negative for the experience of the game for sure. But somebody just contributing money to an experience isn't inherently bad. Like, a lot of times it's just like, think about it in some way that you're just supporting the devs. It's the same way that if you're paying for some vanity content, like you're paying for you to show off, but you're also supporting the game, and everybody else gets to have whatever that aggregated pool helped develop.
Yeah.
And so if you're doing it some sort of governance thing, as you're saying, like the people who are contributing into high level play and like advancing the meta game or whatever things, like they could be get rewarded by getting more rewards as a high level player, or you can have somebody pay into that, and then there'd be like an economy around that. But those people are contributing directly to the development of the game, so it doesn't seem wild to me that they would also have more voting power over whatever choices the devs expose. And then it's just up to the devs to just expose the right things that the governance is voting on, so then it's healthy.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to shake out now, for sure. Like, I can understand that there's some concerns in that, because you can definitely expose the wrong things,
Yeah.
and some things that can be toxic or whatever. But it definitely doesn't need to be. Like, there's a world where what I just described is a very healthy thing, for all involved.